The most important thing that any of us are going to do on this earth is raise our kids. I mean, after accepting Christ, obviously that's probably the most important. That is the most important thing that we can do. But after that, it's raising our kids, and you can tell a lot about a person by the kids they turn loose on society.
The Hunter's Advantage podcast is brought to you by Out on a Limb Manufacturing. We've been using Out on a Limb for many years now, and this upcoming season will be no different. When it comes to good saddle hunting gear, I think of weight, packability, durability, and efficiency. And simply put, Out on a Limb checks all of those boxes. Before we got into saddle hunting, I'd be going back and forth, taking either a climber or hang on. And an issue I found was as I'd be walking through the woods, it seemed like it would always get hung up on something, whether that be low-hanging limbs or a patch of saplings. And not only does that get annoying, it's not very stealthy either. And when you find a good spot to set up, you're still pretty limited to which trees you can sit in. But these saddle hunting systems change all of that. With their selection of saddle platforms and one sticks, Out on a Limb can hook you up with the right setup to help you deflate that big old target buck. To order yourself a high-quality saddle system that's made right here in the USA, just go to outonialimbmfg.com and use code HNTA15 for 15% off anything on their website. Again, the code is HNTA15 for 15% off. We trust Out on a Limb's products to run and gun anywhere in the country, and we hope you will too.
Well, hey everybody, welcome back to the Hunter's Advantage podcast. Joined by my co-host today, Jake Gaylord. How's it going, man? It's like
how's it going today. Is that what you're going to ask? How's it going?
Yeah, no. How's it rolling? How's it going?
As the person that gets introduced and always says how's it going, there's only so many things you can say. And also, this is episode 300, by the way. I don't know if you caught on to that.
Oh, but yeah, man.
300 episodes of trying to fill in that little small talk.
I got an idea. Don't waste a minute of their time. Just say you're doing great.
Doing great. That's exactly what I'm doing. I'm doing great. For everybody listening on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We're also on the socials, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I just like throwing that out there because I feel like we don't really do that enough.
No, that's the long and short of it. Yeah, if you want to see the video, dude, most people are watching on Spotify now. I don't know if the video version has caught on, but it used to be like 50-50. I mean, yeah, that's true. I guess so. Dude, I'm excited about this second half of October coming up. It's going to be really, really fun. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm really excited about? Not being 91 degrees down here in Texas. That's what I'm really, really excited about.
We had some rain come through earlier today, and it got down to like 66, and I was like, "Oh, so this is fall is real."
If it's in the 80s here, man, it feels like fall. It's pretty sad that I'm looking, and when it's 88, I'm like, man, that's a cold front. We got a cold front coming in.
Mm-hmm.
It was raining up at the lease in Oklahoma today, and I saw a 5 in the lows. Man, that just feels like deer season.
You've been doing a few sits out in Texas?
Been trying to get after them here in Texas. I just got off the phone with Carol. We got that mature 11, that 6.5-year-old buck we've been hunting for several years. He showed up, and then that new 8-point with the split eye guards showed up, and Carol was like, "Yeah, I think I'm going to get a little bit of time to get away this next week, and I think I'll go mid part of the week and try to hunt him." And I was like, "Dude, you should." And I said, "I think I'm kind of stuck down here in Texas until I get that slick 11 killed."
Yeah, it's not like you don't have anything to hunt. Like years before, it was different. So like you kind of wanted to make a move up there, but now you don't have to. So it's kind of nice.
It's weird to have the best buck of the year down here south of the Red River. It's a weird time, but man, we close on that. The property gets closed on November 7th. So I got to get that buck killed, and he hit that scrape last night. So I'm hoping to keep him rolling, and then when it gets below 90 degrees, shoot, call that a Texas cold front and get after him. Are you gonna end up hanging your cameras over there on that new spot we were talking about?
I got one spot. It's like 10-12 acres or something like that, and it's in a good spot. It has like a trailer house, I don't know, like 250 yards away from it. Now how that looks and sets up, I'm not sure, but I know that property's severely overgrown, at least the pasture is. But the timber, it butts up to a whole lot more timber, and it has like this, it's like on the butt end or the opposite side of that oxbow on a creek, and all throughout there it's just nothing but timber, at least on Onyx. That's what it looks like. So I want to try to get out. I think the next available I have is like Sunday, and to go try to hang that camera. But then when people will be listening to this on the 27th, we'll actually be doing a little bit of late October hunting down on some public that we usually go to. We're going to go there for like an extended weekend, probably like Friday to Sunday, and get the feel of that place and go try to check out our historic spots. And then we're going to go back, I think, the first cold front in November, and then really try to hammer it for, I think, that week,
Well,
5-7 days, something like that.
I bought 9 cheap SD cameras, so they're ready to
I've
rock.
seen that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Throw
They're
them out
ready to
there.
go. Yeah. So speaking of kind of late October, playing some big bucks down, we got a guest for this week, Don Higgins, here for episode 300. I can't think of a better brother in Christ to bring in for episode 300. I'm excited for this one. How's it going, Don?
Good. How you guys?
Doing good. Doing good.
Good.
We were talking a little bit there pre-podcast about what you got into this evening, but you got to take the grandson out on the farm this evening?
Yeah, this weekend was youth season here in Illinois. So it's a 3-day season, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, Columbus Day, when kids are off school. So 3-day season, we hunted all 3 evenings, didn't hunt mornings because it was just too hot. Cameras weren't showing much movement in the mornings. So we slept in, hunted every evening, seen deer. Well, I guess we didn't see deer the first evening, but the last 2 we did. Walker got to shoot a coyote the second evening. And then this evening we seen a doe and a fawn and a 1.5-year-old buck, but just too warm right now. We needed to cool off a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Did you have a buck scoped out for him, or were you all just going just kind of see what walked out?
Well, there was several bucks I would have let him shoot. Not one in particular. So there was at least 6 or 8 that I'd have been happy with him shooting, and just didn't see any of them. They just weren't moving. I mean, all my cell cams and everything, if they're moving at all, I'm going to know it. But they're just too hot.
I thought I heard last week on Chasing Giants that you were saying you're trying to step the bar a little bit up now because your grandsons have shot several bucks now.
Yeah. So like this evening, that 1.5-year-old buck would have been in trouble a year ago. But
He got spared.
We got enough older bucks around here that we're just a little bit more patient. He'll get one. And, you know, the tag that he's got for youth season is good during our firearm season too. So come November, I'll be back out with him, and I'm sure the conditions will be a whole lot better than what we had the last 3 days.
Are you seeing much? Have you seen much? I guess in October, we're here almost halfway through the month. Have you seen very much mature buck movement at all during daylight, or sticking pretty close in the night right now?
Yeah, not much during daylight at all. And that could change if we get a good cold front. We did get a cold front a week or so ago, and I hunted 3 evenings in a row, seen deer every evening, seen bucks every evening, but just no good ones. I've seen a couple of 3-year-olds, but the big ones just weren't moving until after dark.
Do you think that's because of just how hot it's been, or do you think, just something to do with acorns or that natural browse?
It's just a combination of things. It's been hot, and the cold front we had, it didn't cool down all that much. Maybe 10 degrees, but it was already 15 or 20 degrees above normal. So the cold front brought it down to maybe normal for this time of the year, and it didn't last long. But they were moving, but they were moving right at dark, and just the big ones, I wasn't seeing them on camera or anything until after dark.
Yeah, I've seen a lot. Well, let me ask you this: what would you say is what's a cold front right now at this time of the year in the Midwest? Where are you guys sitting towards like a normal daylight temperature?
Well, normal, we would probably be in the low 70s. If we could get down to where the daytime high is about 60, and at night it was in the, say, mid or upper 30s, that'd be ideal for now. We get towards the end of the month, and I'd like to see it even a little cooler, get some freezing temperatures at night, get a good frost.
That's
and
so
that'll
sad.
Make a world of difference.
Yeah, if it gets into the 50s here, even November, we're like, oh boys, we got to get out. They're going to be moving. It's so sad.
You
Different
guys
in the
need to
South.
move north.
I'm telling you, it's too freaking hot down here. It's still in the 90s down here in Central Texas right now. I'm curious. I've been seeing, and I kind of had a buddy I was talking to the other day that was really kind of harping on me to go out and set a bunch of mock scrapes right now, especially for an inventory perspective. Are you setting up a bunch of mock scrapes, or do you have a lot of scrapes on your farm? You seeing an activity right now?
Yeah, in fact, tonight when we went in and hunted, we was hunting over a clover plot, a fairly sizable clover plot. It's 2 acres plus. And about 20 yards from my blind, a few years ago, I planted a pin oak tree just for the deer to come out into that clover plot and make scrapes under that pin oak tree. Pin oaks have a branch structure where their branches kind of go out and angle downward instead of upward. And they're great trees for deer to scrape under. So as we was getting into the blind this evening, I went and looked at that tree, and the deer have worked over those branches. They've got a couple of scrapes under it and just totally thrashed some of those lower branches. So they're definitely scraping. And, I'm big on putting out the ropes, making rope scrapes, and they're hitting those, fairly consistent. But again, most of that's at night. So we need some cool temperatures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've got 5 live oaks in my backyard, and they have a mind of their own. They freaking grow every which direction and super low to the ground. And I actually hunted a pasture that had a bunch of post oaks in it, and I guess I didn't know too much of this beforehand, but I guess they're not huge acorn producers. I walked through that entire pasture and didn't find a single acorn. It kind of upset me. I thought I was hunting a nice oak flat until I started actually looking up in the trees.
Well, I'm not really familiar with. I know what a live oak is. I've been to the South enough. Definitely understand what you're talking about on the branch structure on those. They get some pretty weird branches. They'll go out 50 feet from the tree and only be, 6 inches off the ground almost. So post oak, I'm not familiar with at all.
So on the scraping, is that something that, or the mock scrapes, or you said the rope scrapes, is that something that you utilize a bunch on your permission pieces to get inventory in places that you wouldn't normally go and hunt plots, or are you able to do some habitat management on a good amount of your permission pieces?
No, I've only got one permission piece where I can do anything as far as habitat. The rest of them, yeah, I do use the rope scrapes to inventory. It depends on if there's other people hunting that I know there's other people hunting there. I don't want to draw attention with a rope hanging from a branch, so I try to be a little more discreet in those situations. But if I at least think that I'm the only one hunting a spot, then I'll go ahead and hang a rope and put the camera on it, and it's a great way to get inventory.
You hunt spots where you got some competition on the property itself?
Oh yeah, I still hunt public land. I got cameras right now on 3 different public tracks, so I've got to be real discreet there. But, yeah, everybody thinks that I've got my home farm and that's where I kill all my deer and everything and do all my hunting, and that's far from the truth. In fact, I've killed some of my better bucks on permission properties over the years, and I do have a great farm that I've developed over the years that it's as good as any place I've ever hunted, and I think it's one of the best properties in North America for whitetails. But it's not a huge property, so I'm trying to find or hunt the biggest bucks I can find, and sticking to one property, you're going to really be limited. So I've got cameras on. I think a while back I counted, I had 26 different properties, public pieces, permission pieces, and my own farm where I've got cameras. So just always covering the countryside looking for a giant.
Do you do anything different when you're hunting, let's say your home farm versus public? Like, are you any more aggressive, or do you set up differently at all?
Yeah, I do. So a lot of times on these private permission properties, I'm waiting for some. So I'm hunting places that others overlook. I'm not going and there's a big old 100-acre woods and getting permission, and I'm sharing it with half a dozen other people. I'm not doing that because that's a recipe for failure. I'm looking for little out of the way pieces that nobody else thinks to hunt. And it might just be a hedgerow out in the middle of an ag field or something like that. And a lot of times it takes some hunting pressure to push the bucks into those places. So if I would go out there right now, I probably wouldn't see much. But, if I'm out there the end of November, Thanksgiving weekend, whenever, by that point, our small game season's open. The bow hunting or archery season's been open for a month and a half or more. We've had our first firearm deer season, so the deer have been pressured a lot. The crops have pretty much all been harvested, and they're looking for a place to get away from people. And that's when they get pushed into those little out of the way places that everybody's overlooking. And I'll have my stands there in place ready to go. I'll have cameras there before the bucks show up, and use past history. If a buck, if I go check the camera, after season, I've let it soak there all season long, and I see, hey, a good buck has showed up here mid-November, and he's been pretty regular for 2 or 3 weeks during, say, the second half of November. Well, I'm looking for him the next year. A lot of the bucks that I'm killing off of my place, I've got, past history of their movement patterns, and that's what I'm trying to take advantage of. So it's totally different than what most people think about hunting permission property. We just go knock on the door, you park at the farmer's barn, and there may be somebody else there, there may not, and you just walk across the field. I've got to keep a low profile, because people know if they see me parked somewhere, I'm probably chasing a good buck, and that just invites competition. So, I do everything I can for people not to know where I'm hunting. And I get permission. I make sure I've always got permission where I'm at, but that doesn't mean my truck will ever sit there. My wife might drop me off. I may park it somewhere else just to throw people off and, ride my electric bike or whatever, four-wheeler, miles down the road and hunt the property where I really want to hunt. So it's a little bit different than what probably most people think about hunting a permission property.
That's when you just need to buy an old beater, like an old Dodge Neon or something, and just go incognito. Yeah.
I actually did that one year. I actually bought an old white Chevy van that looked like a pedophile van. Actually, my buddies were giving me a hard time about it, telling me I needed to paint free candy on the side of
it. One of our friends one time, he had a T-shirt that said, he said, I'm not an idiot. You give me the candy and then I get into the van," or something like that. I like what you said about looking at those kind of overlooked spots. Because I found two places this year in Central Texas. One of them is a 24-acre piece. One of them is an 18-acre piece, and they're nothing but old grown-up cattle pasture. And I've been looking for a good buck in Central Texas for years now, and I found probably a low 150s and like a high 140, mid 140s off these two grown-up cattle pastures. I remember you talking about that, and these are pieces that everywhere around is groomed. Everybody's taking care of their stuff, and these pieces look like, if you were to show them on a real estate showing, they look like a piece of crap, but there's some good deer in them.
And that would be a big property for me. I'm hunting a bigger property as far as total acreage, but most of it will be tillable. So it may be an 80-acre field, it may be a 200-acre field, but the piece of cover that I'm hunting may only be an acre or maybe 3 acres. That's the kind of places that people overlook, and it may be a half a mile off the road. There's just a tree line. Nobody's going to walk back a half a mile for 6 trees that are in the corner of the field or something, but that's where a buck will spend his daylight hours.
Do you try to pair that, like, let's say you get permission property on that and it only has, an acre worth of trees, but is it backed up to any more like timber on the neighbor's side, or is it just all clear as well?
Nope, all clear. If it touches a neighboring piece of cover, it might as well be part of the neighbor's cover, because if the neighbor's piece is getting hunted, the deer don't know that property line. But when it sits out there totally isolated in the middle of a section and there's a mile or more of open cover in every direction, or open field in every direction, that's why it's so critical to have cameras out there and catch the buck doing it the year before and leave that camera there, put a pattern together. When's he show up and how long does he stay? And get your stand ready in the off season. And usually you get about 1, maybe 2 chances at that spot, and it's over. You can't pound a place like that very often. It's like you get your stand ready the day you go hunt it. You get in there in the dark before daylight, and you don't wait 30 minutes before daylight. You get in there an hour or more before daylight, and you don't make a noise in the dark because you're hoping that buck don't wind you as he comes in. A lot of times in a situation like that, he might give up the wind a little more than he would in, a bigger piece of cover where you can't see. But it seems like they get so comfortable out there, they just don't expect anybody to be there. They've bedded out there in the middle of nowhere, and they've watched across the open prairie for, years in a lot of cases. And they just have never, ever run into a person out there. And sometimes they will come in with a crosswind or whatever, and you can get away with it, but you got to be early.
I got to imagine your entrance and exit is pretty tough, and you're probably hunting very close to the edges on something like that, like not getting very far in there at all.
Well, the whole thing is an edge. I mean, you can see right through it, and the exit's not a big deal because you usually don't see a deer. And if you do see one, he's probably in range. And if you want to shoot him, you can. So most of the time, though, you don't see a deer. Most of the time, it's getting up way early, walking across the field way before daylight, sitting in the tree, mostly in the dark, letting the sun come. If you're going to have action, it's going to happen right there at daybreak. It's not going to happen an hour after daybreak. That buck's not walking across wide open territory in daylight. And when that first shooting light happens, that buck's going to be there. And
have you ever seen one stand out of his bed?
Oh, I've seen that a lot, actually. I've climbed into my stands before, and once I got in the stand, I looked down and seen a bedded buck.
That's awesome.
More than once, within 30 yards of my stand. That takes special conditions. You need some wind to cover your noise. It needs to be earlier in the season where it'd be almost impossible to do that in the late season when all the foliage is gone off the trees. But early you can do it.
Do you often see like there's a holding capacity on like a small block timber like that? Like, is it usually like only a couple deer or like a single mature buck, or do you have or a bunch of different combinations of stuff?
It's never a lot of deer. A lot of times it's a single deer, a single buck. Occasionally it might be a couple of bucks. And I've even seen it with a doe family group, 5 or 6 does and fawns. If the pressure's, been really hot right before that. So, but most of the time it's a buck or maybe 2 bucks.
That's awesome. Gotcha. I remember when I went to Ohio, I think it was like 2 years ago in January, and being in the South here, like there's a bunch of timber down here and not as much like plains or open ag fields and stuff. And I remember seeing like just big 40-acre blocks of timber. And I'm like, how the heck do you hunt that? Like surrounded by wide open ag, right? I'm like, well, they're in there, but I feel like the second you step in there, you're just blowing them all out.
Well, you got to hunt the edges. You can't be busting through the middle, and your access has to be perfect. You have to watch the wind direction. You can't, walk along the edge of that woods with your scent blowing in there. I come straight into a piece like that across wide open country with the wind right in my face, and I go right back out with the wind at my back.
You said earlier in the podcast that the movement's kind of slow and the trail cameras are almost non-existent. When do you typically start seeing a switch in that?
Well, I like to break October down into 3 sections or segments, 10 days apiece, like the first 10 days, the second 10 days, and the last 10 days. Although there's 31 days in the month, obviously, but that last 10-day period, if I get a cold front, I don't hunt October mornings except during that last 10-day period if we get a cold front. If it stays warm through October, there's lots of years I never hunt a single morning in October. But if I do hunt a morning in October, it's going to be during that last 10 days, and it's going to be on a cold front.
Yeah.
And in fact, I like that last 10 days of October. If we get a cold front then, I like it better than I do November.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're in that cruising pattern?
Well, they're just, they move, and it's much more predictable. They'll move every bit as much on a cold front in November, but it's not near as predictable. And I'm trying to kill these bucks on purpose, not by accident. And so I know where he's bedding, and I know where he's probably coming out of his bed. And I've got my stand in place waiting. And then if we get the conditions in October, it's very likely, way more likely, that I'm going to get him to come out and walk past my stand than it is in November, because in November, he may not even be in that same bedding area. He may be bedded a mile away. He may be out chasing does and never make it home for 2 or 3 days. But on October, that pattern's way tighter and just way more predictable.
How big of a range increase do you see once that time hits?
It just depends on the buck. I mean, some of them don't hardly go any farther than they do in October. Now, what they do is they will utilize their entire range more frequently. So in October, he may just be in one little, he may spend most of his daylight hours in a 40-acre tract. And his home range may be 600 acres. Well, come November, he's covering that whole 600 acres, not just that 40. And that goes right back to what I was saying. In late October, he's on that 40 acres instead of 600. And it's a whole lot more likely that he's going to come by your stand.
I'm trying to think about it from a perspective of like the big block timber, and miles of wide open ag field. Do you see bucks in that last 10, I guess 11 days of October, move into different woodlots? I mean, looking for more different block timber, looking for does as they're starting to kind of cruise and put down scrapes and that sort of stuff? Or do you think for the most part they're staying pretty tight to where they were the first 20 days?
I think they're staying pretty tight for the most part, but they're moving a lot more within that during daylight. Like right now, I've got very little faith that I could kill a good buck in the next week. If somebody said, you kill a 4-year-old buck in the next week, I'll give you $1 million. Well, I don't have a lot of faith that I could do it based on the areas I hunt. Now, if they said by the end of October, which, is 2 weeks, but it incorporates that last 10 days, I'm going to collect my $1 million. So it's just like the activity picks up and those bucks are still where they were the previous 20 days, but they're moving a whole lot more than they were the previous 20 days.
So if that lasts 10 days of October, they're showing some sort of movement, like that maybe doesn't closely resemble the rut because they're not going as far or maybe as crazy in the head. But you think that last 10 days is one of the best times to kill a buck on purpose?
Absolutely. And that's a good time to hunt scrapes too, because that buck, when he comes out of his bed in the evening, that last hour of daylight, usually last half hour, one of the first things he's probably going to do is hit a scrape. And on his way to a food source or water or whatever, he's probably going to hit a scrape real soon after getting out of his bed. And the thing of it is, he's hitting that scrape the first 20 days as well. Like right now, they're hitting scrapes, but right now they're doing it in the dark, and he's not coming out of his bed until it's dark, and then he's hitting it. Well, that last 10 days on a cold front, he's going to get out of his bed a little bit earlier, and he's going to hit that scrape before it's dark.
Do you place rope scrapes and stuff in like transition areas from bed to food, or are you mainly on field edges in your food plots, or will you hunt over a specific scrape?
Yeah, but there's a lot more to it than just a scrape. I mean, I try to, stack things to my advantage. So he's coming to that scrape, but he's also on his way to a prime food source, and maybe in a funnel area or something else. So I'm trying to stack things. But scrapes in late October, especially on the afternoon hunts, are the ticket.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited for that season. I'm excited for an actual cold front where we start getting pictures of them hitting scrapes during the daylight. Cause right now it's depressing. I just refresh my cell cams and it's right at dark and still not a single picture.
Yeah. They're not hitting the scrapes hard yet. But they are hitting them some.
So I'm curious obviously you're a big habitat manager. you hunt a bunch of permission pieces too. But what role does calling play in this last 10 days of October in your strategy? Is it something that you implement at all, or are you just kind of you killing them as a silent ghost in the woods?
I try to do it silent. Occasionally, I will. Well, if I see a buck that I want to shoot, and I don't think he's coming within range, I'll try to call. But with these mature bucks, and especially this time of the year, I think that calling probably saves more bucks than it kills. That brings in and they get shot. I think they're not in full rut mode yet. They're still a little bit. They're still really cautious actually, and they hear that grunt call, those rattling antlers or whatever, and they're not going to come charging in to see what's going on. They're going to lock up, and that buck may have been coming past you anyway. He may have been going to, move right past your stand, hit that scrape or whatever. But when he hears that noise, he locks up and he just stands there, and he wants to see a deer, or he wants confirmation that what he's heard is really a deer. And you can actually be counterproductive, especially the last part of October. It can be, and that can be any time of year, really. It can be the same way in the rut, but in late October especially, I think calling can lock those deer up instead of bringing them on in. And that's not always the case. The buck I shot last year is a perfect example. I knew where that buck was bedded, and I got as close as I could. I already had the stand in place, and I took some rattling antlers, and I wasn't banging them together like it was middle of November. I just kind of tickled the tines, and not a lot. And I would do that about every 30 minutes. I'd just tickle them tines a little bit. And where I was situated was under 4 giant bur oak trees that were dropping acorns, and the deer were feeding there anyway. And my idea was I wanted that buck. I knew he could hear me just because I knew where he was bedded. And I wanted him to think that there was a couple of bucks underneath those oaks, feeding on acorns, and they were sparring and telling him, the coast is clear, come on in. And that's exactly what happened. He came on in, he locked up about 40 yards from me and started rubbing on a tree. And I had to watch him rub a tree thinking I was going to lose shooting light for a few minutes. But then he got done rubbing and he came on in the rest of the way, and I shot him. But that's typical of a October buck that you call in. He's not going to come crashing in. He's going to come in slow, and he may just stop and not come in at all.
Do you attribute it more to like just kind of the wisdom and the cautiousness of a mature buck, or more to like people don't know what they're doing when they're calling?
I think both, but I think a big part of it is just the nature of the deer. I mean, a mature buck is a pretty wary creature anyway. He's on edge all the time. He's always looking for danger. He's looking for a reason to blow out and run, or to slink away and turn around and slip back into the brush. And when you give him a reason, and when you call to him, you're just heightening that awareness of his surroundings. And then he's looking for you, and he's looking for you anyway, but now he's really looking for you. When he hears those antlers, or he hears that grunt call, or whatever it is, now he's looking.
Yeah, I used this example I think a week ago, but we were in Alberta hunting in September, and guy was calling in this elk, and it was a mature bull, like a 7x6, and he came in, and at about 70 he stopped, and he was like, I heard a bugle and I heard a bunch of cow calling, and it stops right here until I see what I thought I heard. And they kept calling at him, kept cow calling, and he just butt away and just started to walk away. And he was like, this is where I stop. I heard you, I believe you, but right here, I'm kind of toting the line. Do you see that with mature bucks too?
Absolutely.
They have like a line in the sand where it's like, I could imagine you just see a big old frame and just 2 eyes kind of just slowly looking through the timber at you, trying to find you. The Hunter's Advantage podcast is brought to you by Numa Outdoors. Growing up, I remember waddling around the woods looking like the Michelin Man and still freezing my butt off. But thanks to Numa Outdoors, those days are over. It's not just about staying warm. When I go out hunting, I need to know that I have gear for every single thing the woods might throw at me, whether it's heat or rain or cold. Numa Outdoors offers quality gear for every pursuit. If you're looking for quality garments backed by a lifetime warranty, make sure to go to numaoutdoors.com and use code HA20 for 20% off at checkout. Whether we're chasing whitetails here in the South or we're headed out west to get after some bugling bulls, we trust Numa Outdoors, and we hope you will too.
Well, you kind of see that with like if you're hunting over field edges and stuff, because I remember a few years back, there's this 8-point that we named Greatness. And I forget, it had to be late. Well, this was probably like November 5th or 6th. And because I was tagged out, and I was trying to get my now wife a buck. And it was probably, I don't know, 15 minutes left of shooting light. And she already wanted to go. She fixed her hair for the 50th time. We're in a blind, but still yet, if you're up here, they can still see, obviously. And so I was just like, we'll just call it quits early. And like, so what I do is I just smash the antlers as hard as I can together, and I set them down, and I start like loading up the camera stuff, and I go to look up, and I just see that buck just barely come out of the timber and like maybe 10 yards into the field edge. And then he kind of gets out there, he starts walking to where he heard the rattling, and he just stops, and then he just slinks right back into the timber. And it's like he walked out to kind of see what was going on, but as soon as he didn't see anything, like maybe if we had a decoy setup or whatever, but he didn't see nothing, and he just slid right back in. And I tried to hammer again, and nothing. And he was like, you had your chance and you blew it.
Well, how many times do you do that and they come from behind you or something and you never even see them stick their head out and walk away, and you're like, oh, must not be nothing in the area?
Well, they definitely want to get downwind of you too. And I'd hate to guess how many bucks I've called in that I never seen because they went downwind of me and just turned around and walked away. It's not like they typically blow out of there and, tell the whole world. Typically they just slink back in the direction they came from.
That's what I like to tell myself whenever, it's like day 4 or 5 on a rutcation or something. And I'm just sitting there. I'm like, you know what? I've probably seen bucks, or I've probably been around bucks. I just haven't seen them. And so that always gives me a little bit of motivation there. But just to kind of follow up with, you said earlier the last 10 days is the most, however you worded it, the most predictable time to kill a buck on purpose. I know I butchered that, but I hope you kind of get what I'm saying. Whenever they become less patternable, coming into the, early parts of November, is there anything that you do if you have one target buck that you're solely after that you kind of throw out there? Or do you keep trying to hammer the same spots just during the rut, hoping he cruises by?
Well, the big change I make is once November rolls around, I start hunting a lot more mornings. No matter, I don't necessarily wait for a cold front in November.
Mm-hmm.
Starting about the first 3 or 4 days in November, I'm hunting mornings regular, like almost every morning. In October, if I'm going to hunt a morning, it's only going to be on a cold front.
When do you see him quit utilizing the scrapes for obviously laying down sign and kind of cruising and, being the fire hydrant? When do you see him kind of starkly quit using that and just strictly go and cruising for does?
Well, again, it changes with the buck. I mean, some bucks just, early November, they start cruising for does and they don't take time to hit scrapes too much. And other ones will hit every scrape they come to. So a lot of that just depends on the deer.
And on your your late October kind of strategy for, I guess, stand locations, what are some of your favorite kind of features or stand locations to hunt at that time of the year? Are you still hunting, food in the evenings? Are you hunting transitions from bed to food? I mean, obviously there's probably a lot of different scenarios, but what are some of your more productive spots that you see that last 10 days of October?
Well, I want to get as close to a bedding area as possible, but I want to be between that bedding area and the food. And if there's a funnel, a pinch point between the two, that's even better. But I want to be closer to the bed than the food. I don't want to be sitting on the field edge or a food plot edge. If I can be back, in the thick stuff we're right on the edge of the thick stuff, that's where I would much rather be.
So you're kind of favoring the bedding side versus the food, you said?
Yeah, absolutely.
At what point would you transition the other way around, like hunting closer to the food, or is that something you wouldn't do till the late season?
Well, late season is the time to hunt the food, and I would still, at that time, I would rather be closer to the bedding area. But the problem is with the leaves off the trees and everything, it's much harder to get back there without being busted. So out of necessity, I'm closer to the food, just because I don't want to get busted on the hunt or on my way into the stand. So you think about it, during the course of an entire season, how many daylight hours, and I'm talking a 3.5 month archery season, how many daylight hours is a mature buck in a food plot? You could count on one hand how many total daylight hours that deer is in a food plot in 3.5 months. He's spending his daylight hours in the thick cover bedded. If you want to kill him consistently, you better get in there with him, or you're going to be just, rolling the dice that you happen to be there on one of those 4 or 5 hours that he's in that food and it's daylight.
Yeah, that's a good point. I never really thought about the pure amount of hours that they're spending. I mean, I'm guessing probably a lion's share of those hours in a food plot are probably even going to be in the late season too. So
Right.
How much of that's going to be in the first 2 months unless a doe leads him astray, chasing him across the food plot?
Yeah, get in the cover. He's in his bed daylight hours every day. He's not in that food plot daylight hours very, very seldom.
So the last 10 days of October, obviously, let's say you're not hunting a cold front during that time period. Do you expect to kind of see deer behaving like they are the first 2 weeks of the month, or are you still going to see increased movement in the last 10 days of October, even with I guess, pretty average temperatures?
Well, it's definitely going to pick up, but not to the point where you can count on it any one day. I mean, you get that cold front and you can head to the timber and you're going to see deer, and your odds are really good of seeing your target buck. If the temperatures are just average for that time of year, yeah, you might see deer, you might see your target buck, but the odds aren't near as good.
Leading up to season, late summer, everybody gets this rush of adrenaline when it comes October 1st or whenever their season opens, and it's like everybody just wants to get out there into the woods. And like years past, what I've tried to do, I guess now, is like kind of take a step back and not, for lack of better words, blow my wad, too early, and kind of not get burnt out whenever the hunting gets actually good. Do you think that's the common mistake most people struggle with, is kind of like getting in there too anxious, too early, and then by that time they're either, already burnt out, or they just already kind of ruined the property or the spots that they scouted throughout the summer?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure some people get burned out, but I think they burn out their stands. They educate the deer to where their stands are, and by the time the hunting gets good, the deer already know what's going. They already know to avoid that spot.
Realistically, you only have about 10 days worth of hunting, or I guess predictable good hunting, and then all of a sudden it starts to get unpredictable.
Well, it's probably more than 10 days. It's that last 10 days of October, and then probably the first 4 or 5 days in November. So there's about 2 weeks there where if you get a cold front during that 2-week period, you got a really good chance of killing a good buck. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot. To be honest, I'd break November kind of down into 3 segments also. The first 10 days, the middle 10 days, and the last. And I think the middle 10 days of November is a very, very difficult time to kill a mature buck, because most of them are locked down with hot does, and a lot of times they're not in their typical habitat. That they'll run them does out in the middle of a harvested field, or in a drainage ditch out in the middle of nowhere, or someplace like that where you wouldn't think to even look for them, and if you did, it'd be almost impossible to kill them with a bow anyway. So that middle 10 days of November is a very difficult time to hunt. So, and I think you talk about guys getting burned out. Now, I think a lot of guys get burned out during that time, and a fantastic time to kill giant deer is that last part of November, Thanksgiving weekend, and in there. And by that point, there's so much, most guys are burned out. I'd much rather, if I'm going to take a break, I'll take a break, that middle part of November, and then be ready to hit it hard again for that last 10 days.
So let's say, someone's working a 9 to 5, they got 5 days to take off and go hunting, and they have a target buck on camera, but it's just been obviously at night or not very many pictures. If that target buck's consistently coming out at night, would you suggest that, very last part in early November, like let's say the 28th to the 3rd, for him to take off?
Well, if a guy's got the flexibility to schedule his vacation on short notice, I would watch the weather. And I would much rather hunt a cold front the last week of October than a warm front in November. And a good example, and happened in 2020. We got a cold front there at the end of October, and I seen all kinds of deer. I killed my biggest buck ever, Mel, shot him October 30th, and the deer were going crazy. I think he was like the 7th buck I seen that morning that I shot him. And then right after I shot him, the 1st of November, things heated up and temperatures were above normal, and the deer activity just absolutely stopped. I wasn't seeing any activity hardly, during the daylight. I was seeing it, on the cameras at night. But on that year, that cold front at the end of October was way better for deer activity than a week later in November when it should have been prime.
Well, you see that November's like the Super Bowl for deer hunters, and you see that NOV on the weather app, and you're just like, oh man, that you can't do no wrong in this time period. And I don't know how many times we've went the first week of November and it's been 80 degrees, 70, 80 degrees, and then movement sucks. And then on the 7th, it switches and it turns on again. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to just see a bunch of deer just because it says November on the calendar.
Yeah. And, a mistake that I made for a lot of years really was I did exactly what you're saying. I pinned all my hopes on November, and to the point where I didn't hunt last of October as hard as I should have, because I was pacing myself. I didn't want to get burned out, so I didn't hit it very hard through October. But boy, once the calendar changed November, I started hunting hard, and I missed some opportunities in the end of October. So if a guy is flexible in his schedule where he can watch the weather forecast and take his days off, that's the way to do it. If you can't, then there's more booners killed November 7th and 8th than any other date. And I would focus my days off around that. I've said for years, if I could only take a 7-day period off, it would be November 5th through the 12th. Everything else being equal. But you throw a cold front in and it's not equal. The cold front before that will outshine that period.
It's funny you were talking about the lockdown stuff, and I'd never really experienced lockdown at all until this last year. I was hunting a draw hunt down here in Central Texas. You had to kill 2 mature does before you could hunt a buck. So I had 1 mature doe killed. I'm walking down to my stand, or I guess my seat. I was hunting out of a ghillie suit on the ground, just this cedar thicket. I have a doe bust out of the cedar thicket, buck chasing her. They run like 40 yards past me and both bed down. The buck bed's closer to me than the doe. I'm walking past the mature buck to try to shoot the doe so I can check her in to come back and hunt the buck. And it was sad. I was like, get out of here. And I was trying to kick and bust him out of there. He wouldn't go at all. He was just zombified with that doe. It was funny. Yep. That's the first time I've seen lockdown.
Well, when they're locked down, they're not leaving that doe. Wherever she goes, he's going to be right there with her. And that's why so many of them get killed during the rut.
Yeah. I mean, so this year, you're not hunting your target buck's not on your home farm this year, huh?
Nope.
Did you wade through some good ones this year to ultimately pick this turning point buck, or has it kind of been a slower antler growth season for you?
Well, I had some bucks that I was hoping to target this year, and like a handful of them, not just one or two. And some of them disappeared. I have no idea what happened to them. I assume they must have died. And then I had a couple that put on some inches, but not what I was hoping. So I decided, well, I'll give them a couple more years. This Turning Point buck is, I know he's 5.5. He may even be 6.5. We got 3 years of history with him as far as trail camera pictures. Got both of his sheds from last spring. It's the only 2 sheds I got from him, but I did find both of them last spring. And I thought, he's going to be tough to kill. So why don't I challenge myself with that deer and let the others, get a year older and see what they do next year.
So are you choosing which buck to target? I guess which mature buck to target, just based on like at 5.5, or is it individualistic on like, hey, this rack I think supports he can be bigger than this, or you just making an individual decision on each one of them?
And that's exactly what I'm doing. So this Turning Point buck that I'm targeting this year, I don't think he's got enough going on his head to put too many more inches on. I mean, you could let this deer go for another 3 years and be lucky if he gained another. I just don't see him gaining 10 inches ever. Be lucky if he gained 5 inches. So his rack is a little bit bigger than last year, very similar to last year, just a little bit bigger. So if I see a buck that I think, he's got a lot of bumps and little stickers, and I think he's a buck that could add 20 or 30 inches, well, I'm going to give him a chance to do it. If it's a buck like Turning Point, the one I'm after this year, that I don't think that, well, why not target that buck?
Mm-hmm. So what about on a typical frame? Is it just have to do with maybe tine length or frame or how he sits, or like you talked about, bumps and stickers and stuff? How do you determine that on a typical number of points?
Well, to be honest, and it's not just my properties. Illinois, I remember Gordon Whittington years ago when I shot my first 200-inch buck. That buck had a typical frame in the 170s, but he had enough extras to push him over 200. And Gordon, when he seen the rack, he said, this is a typical Illinois buck. He's got a nice typical frame, but he's got plenty of extras too. He's not super non-typical, with just trash going everywhere, but he's also not a clean typical. He's like in between. And that's what we see a lot of here. It's pretty rare for a bucker on me or that I'm hunting on any of the properties where I got cameras to be 4 years old and not have some kind of extra points. Just about all of them do. If they don't, they're usually just a clean 8. But the bigger bucks, they've got some stickers.
I know it's pretty specific, per region or area, but do you think that's more common than most people think?
Well, I think that in the richer soils, that's where these bucks tend to put on the extra points. You get an area that, and I don't want to pick on any certain area, but you get an area where the soils aren't really productive, nutrient rich, and you're going to have a lot more clean typical racks. When those bucks are feeding in areas where the plants are growing in nutrient rich soils, they've got the nutrients to put on extras, and they typically do.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. Now we know the reason behind, the name for the Turning Point buck, and, it's a pretty good tip of the hat, but for the people who might not have, caught that episode or that video on your YouTube, can you kind of go into that a little bit?
Yeah, I just, I got a lot of respect for Charlie Kirk and, what he did with his life. And, when he got assassinated, I was thinking to myself, here's a 31-year-old man, half my age. I'm 62. He was 31, half my age. And he had made such a huge impact, way bigger impact than I'll ever make in my life. And I just wanted to honor him. And if I get this buck shot and produce a video and everything, I want to just kind of add to Charlie Kirk's legacy. Um, you know, he was all about spreading the good news, the Christian faith, and I've tried to do that as well. And I just seen it as an opportunity by naming that buck Turning Point. That if I get him shot and produce a video, that there's going to be all kinds of opportunity there to share that message with people that might not hear it otherwise. So that was why I chose that name. Also, it's not going to be an easy deer to kill. It's going to be a challenge, and as Christians, a lot of times it's not easy to walk the walk. I mean, it's easy to talk it, but man, people can push your buttons, and you try to do the right thing in every circumstance, every situation, and it can be tough. So the challenge that this buck represents is an opportunity to share that message. Just because things are tough doesn't mean you take shortcuts. And yeah, we all make mistakes. We're all going to do things that we'll regret later. I don't know anybody that hasn't. But if I can somehow use this buck and the hunt for this buck to continue the message that Charlie Kirk started, and that's what I want to do.
I can tell you the last 3 weeks, month at church I don't know if we're in the middle of revival or this is just the beginning of one, but man, our church is packed. Like they're talking about opening more services. There's a lot of people turning to Christ as a result of this, and it's a pretty cool time. Obviously, evil's going to rear its ugly head again and again, but it seems like we're living in the middle of a revival right now.
Well, we definitely are, and I seen a really interesting figure that Charlie Kirk was on these college campuses, reaching out to these college age kids, and these college age males swung to the conservative side from the 2020 election to the 2024 election. In that 4-year period when Charlie was out there, hitting these campuses, that vote swung to the conservative side by 41%. 41% more young on the males, the young males. I think the females are still, we need to work on them. But the young males on these college campuses swung 41% in that 4-year period to the conservative side. And I think it's even grown probably more since his death a month ago than it did the previous 4 years, because these college campuses now, the Turning Point seminars, whatever it is they're having on these campuses, are just so much bigger now. I mean, they're filling stadiums, and all these new Turning Point organizations at high schools and colleges are just growing, I mean, phenomenally. So I think he's had probably as big an impact in the 30 days since his death that he did the last 4 years of his life.
Yeah, it's a really cool time. It reminded me of that. I don't know if it's John Piper or what sermon it is, but it's the "Don't Waste Your Life" sermon, and he's talking about 2 missionaries that get murdered for their faith, and then there's a couple of retirement people that go to Florida and they collect shells the rest of their life, and he's like, "Don't waste your life." And he starts talking about the missionaries that are murdered, and he's like, "Is this a travesty?" He's like, "No, it's not. They didn't waste their life. They made sure it counted." And this is I don't know, it's a really cool time. I know we're supposed to be bold in our faith, but I feel like for once, it feels like there's a large amount of people that are okay being bold in their faith too. So you don't feel so alone now.
Yeah, but the enemy doesn't like it. And I can tell you personally that I get attacked more now by being bold than I ever did before when I was lukewarm. But I don't regret it whatsoever. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. What God put me on this earth to do was to minister to lost deer hunters. And I think if you look at the disciples in the Bible, there wasn't a one of them that was perfect. They all had issues. And if you look at me, I've had all kinds of issues in my life. I'm divorced. I got in all kinds of trouble when I was a kid. How God opened the doors for me, or why he chose me in the hunting community to spread the word. And I'm not the only one, don't get me wrong. And there's a lot of people with bigger name than me in the hunting industry that are also spreading the good word. But the fact that he picked me, I just shake my head sometimes in disbelief that he's opened the doors that he has, because of what a pathetic person that I've been in my life.
Yeah, it's awesome that he chooses to use us in that way. I think it just points us back to Christ, because you're like, I'm apart from him, I'm absolutely nothing. He took a piece of garbage and kind of cleaned me up, and he can even use that if you let him.
I was just going to say, if you're not dead, God's not done. I've heard that saying before, and it sticks with me. And some days I'm ready to hang it up. You get online on social media, and the haters have come out and bashing you about this, bashing you about this. Those days I got to remind myself, if I'm not dead, God's not done. Keep plugging away.
Mm-hmm. And then it also helps too that knowing that, you are living in a fallen world, and like, it's not supposed to be good. It's not supposed to be easy. And like, I feel like that helps me out a ton when you kind of have to deal with stuff like that.
So some days though, we talk about a little bit on the Chasing Giants podcast, but I'm telling you, Terry and I don't talk about 95% of the attacks that we deal with.
Mainly attacks at like your character or ethics, or like, is that mainly at the character thing?
Yeah, character and hunting ethics, and you name it.
That's what I don't understand. It's like, okay, so Charlie got assassinated for, just having a conversation, right? And then what do? It's like, in the grand scheme of things, I get on a podcast, I talk about deer, I like to shoot deer. And it's like, how does that hurt anybody?
Well, I think a lot of it's just jealousy, that there's a lot of people that wish they were in my shoes and your shoes as well, that, they wish they had a podcast. They wish they were killing big deer. They wish they were writing magazine articles. They wish they were a consultant, and they can't do it. So they're going to knock you down to their level. They can't climb to your level, so they're going to pull you down. And I had a pastor one time that used to use the analogy of a bucket of crabs. And, when one crab is about to crawl out the top of the bucket, and the other crab will reach up and grab him and pull him back down, he's not going to let the other another one get ahead of him. And, I've seen it, I've shared how poor my beginnings were. And when my wife and I were first married, that we were so poor, we had our electricity shut off multiple times, and she'd have to carry a calculator with her to the grocery store to keep track of every item she put in the cart, because she might only have $20 to spend or whatever. And, I've seen it and as we became more successful and as we had more, the haters just grew. We didn't have haters back in that day. When I started as an outdoor writer, I didn't have haters. But the more I've accomplished and the more we got, the more people resented us. And I don't understand it, because I'm someone that has no jealousy towards anyone else. And in fact, I cheer people on. I want people to be successful. And if I can help them, I'll absolutely do it. And I don't care if it's deer hunting or what their, career is or their job is, good for them. I hope that they make millions. It's no skin off of me if somebody else makes millions and millions of dollars. I don't know why I should hate them, but a lot of society is not that way. And I think it really comes down to the people who have never had Jesus in their heart. They didn't grow up in a home where Jesus was present. They were never introduced to Jesus as a kid, and now they're an adult, and they've got the devil in them. I mean, there's two sides. There's good and evil. There's no middle ground. Every one of us has got to choose. We're either on the side of good or we're on the side of evil. And if you're not on the side of good, you are on the side of evil. And I think, and I feel bad for these people that they were never introduced to Jesus and to doing things the right way. people growing up without parents or without their dad. Just think about all the people in prison, all the guys in prison. The percentage of the guys in prison that didn't have a father in their life is astronomical. I forget what the figure was, but I mean, it's way up there. It's like most of those guys in prison, most men in prison today did not have a father in their home when they was a kid. And that father in the home is so important. And that's one thing that Terry and I preach a lot on Chasing Giants is, guys, get your priorities in order. If you got a young family, those deer are going to be there the rest of your life to chase. You can chase those when you're in your 50s and 60s, but those little kids, I'm telling you, in the blink of an eye, they're going to be gone and out of the house. And, I did a presentation. It's actually on YouTube. I spoke at a church in Effingham, Illinois, and it's on my YouTube channel. But I threw up on the screen the number 3-17-93, and it looks like a date, like March 17th of 1993. And I go on to explain that if a child is the spiritual leader in their home, the odds of them leading any of their family members to Christ is 3%. If the mother is the spiritual leader in the home, the odds of her leading anyone in her family, any of her kids, anyone in her family to Christ is 17%. But if the man is the spiritual leader, 93% of the time, he's going to lead somebody in his family to Christ. And that's where we failed in this society, is that the men have not stepped up to the plate. It's not the women's fault. And it's not the kids' fault. It's the men have not been there to raise, Christian children, whether it be boys or girls. Even on the girls' side, if her father's not there, she has no idea how a man is supposed to treat a woman. She needs a godly father in her life that she can watch how he treated her mother. And that's missing in our society today. And, Terry and I both, we try to use our podcast and our platform whenever we're speaking or whatever to get that message out to young deer hunters. Guys, deer hunting is great. It's a great pastime. There's absolutely nothing wrong with shooting deer, hunting deer. The land management side's great, but get your priorities in order. And if you got a young family at home, they should come first. And that's something that I did wrong when I was younger. And that's why I drive the message home. If I could go back in my life and do anything over, the thing that I would do is go back when my girls were young, and I would spend way more time with them than what I did. And I spent time with them. I didn't miss a school function that they had or anything like that. But there was a lot of times when I was sitting in a deer stand that I could have been with those girls. And I just try to get that message across to young guys. Don't make the same mistake I did. Don't look at me as some kind of hero just because I shoot big deer. Look at me as someone that's trying to help you be better than what I've been.
If you guys are anything like us, you love being in the deer woods and chasing big bucks. But there's another part of you that has that itch to chase other big game species.
If you've ever dreamed of chasing black bear, mule deer, or moose, Alberta, Canada is the land of opportunity for these adventure-style hunts.
Each year, hundreds of first-time visiting hunters from around the world come to Alberta for the options, quality, and accessibility that the land offers.
With over 1,800 Boone and Crockett entries and endless possibilities of taking multiple species on a single trip, Alberta is truly a paradise for a big game hunter. This is why we partnered up with the Alberta Professional Outfitters Society. To check it out, go to apos.ab.ca and click Find an Outfitter. From there, you can browse all the different big game species and hunting styles that fit with what you want out of the hunt.
Or you can send a free hunt inquiry through the Follow the Lead tool, and the outfitters who have what you are looking for will reach out to you directly.
So make sure to check out apos.ab.ca to learn all about hunting in Alberta and get connected to the right outfitter for you.
You're talking to two people kind of all ears open right now. Christian has a 10-month-old right now. My wife's due in March. So what from your experience, what do you think's the key to raising a good Christian child?
Well, they're going to follow what they see out of their parents. And I would be in church every Sunday. with that child. I would make sure. I mean, your first priority is to your spouse, not your child comes second. But they need to see you loving your spouse, not treating your wife like a servant or anything like that. You guys are a partner. It's a partnership, really. Now, yeah, the Bible gives us different roles, but you can fulfill your role and still be very respectful to your wife. And whether you're raising boys or girls doesn't matter. They need to see that, and they need to see that your family is a priority to you above all else. Well, second to God, but there's not a hobby like deer hunting or golf or anything else that your kid should ever think you think more of that than you do them. Because I'm telling you, guys, in the blink of an eye, you're going to be in an empty nest, and those kids are going to be gone. You got just a few years to instill in them the values that they're going to carry with them for life. And you have no idea. The most important thing that any of us are going to do on this earth is raise our kids. I mean, after accepting Christ, obviously that's probably the most important. That is the most important thing that we can do. But after that, it's raising our kids. And you can tell a lot about a person by the kids they turn loose on society. And that these guys that are in prison, again, why are they there? Because they didn't have that father there to show them the right way. So I'd say make your family a priority, and treat your wife in such a way that those kids learn, whether they're boys or girls, how a marriage should be.
I heard something. I think that's a good word, by the way. I think that's really good, and it's convicting too, which means that the Holy Spirit's doing something, right? But I heard something really profound from my counselor a few weeks back, and he told me that our hearts are idol factories. They'll take anything, and they'll help you put it above God. So like you can take something as cool as deer hunting and shooting a big buck and being in the stand. I see that quote every it drives me insane, but I see it every Sunday. This is my church. I'm out in my church. No, it's not. The woods is not church.
Mm-hmm.
But it's crazy. Our hearts, like, above all, they're wicked, and you can't, they'll turn something as cool as deer hunting into something above God. Anything above God is not a good thing.
I've done it. I did it when I was younger, and that's why I'm trying to help young men like you not make the same mistake I made. And fortunately, God allowed me to live long enough to get things right. But and my kids turned out fantastic. I could not have asked for better kids. I caused my parents more grief in 1 week than my kids ever caused me. But I just want to help people be better than what I was.
I think I think you're doing that. I've been super encouraged by the podcast and just listening to you guys, especially the faith, right? I mean, when I tell people about y'all's podcast, I say this is a faith-based deer hunting podcast. I don't say it's a deer hunting podcast. I mean, I listen to it for the encouragement, in the word, and for priorities. When you're getting your teeth kicked in hunting deer, you're like, okay, cool. Let me realign this, right? Deer hunting's fun. This is cool, but let's not make it something.
I'm also there for the rants too, by the way. So
100%.
Keep doing that too.
I haven't had one of them for a while.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit. I know we've been kind of talking about this last week of October, but just kind of to bring it all kind of full circle and wrap up. There's going to be a lot of folks that don't want to stay out of the woods the next 7 days, even when it is 90 degrees. You take this as a good opportunity to do some doe management right now, or is it just something from a mature buck perspective? If it's not primo, you're going to kind of stay out?
Well, my doe management is not based on time of the season. It's based on location. So I don't want to shoot a doe close to my sanctuary any time of the year. I don't want her running in the sanctuary and dying, and I got to go in there and drag her out. I want to shoot does from stands that doe's not going to go into the cover. She's likely to run out across an open field away from me and pile up. So location to me is more important than timing of the year when I shoot my does. The other thing I'm looking for is I'm looking for those does that have buck fawns with them. You shoot a doe that's got buck fawns, and research has shown that those buck fawns are likely to live out their life in that birth area. If that doe is alive next year, she will run off her buck fawns and before she gives birth to the next set. So as part of my management program, I'm trying to shoot does that have buck fawns so that those buck fawns stay, around my place or at least halfway close. So my doe management is probably a little bit different than most people's.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, shooting a doe with buck fawns, outside looking in, kind of a little cruel, but I get the point behind it.
Well, most does are going to have fawns anyway, unless a predator's got them this time of year. So you might as well shoot the ones with the buck fawns and keep those bucks home.
Not a bad way to look at it. So as we kind of wrap up here, as we kind of head into this best part of the season, right? We're headed into this, like we said, two-week time period, best time of the year to kill a mature buck, a target buck on purpose. What's one piece of advice you would leave with, a hunter that you think will help him be successful in this pretty critical time period here?
Well, you've got to hunt undisturbed deer. If a deer's been pressured, whether it's by you or somebody else, your odds of killing that deer go way down. They're like 10%. So you got to hunt unpressured deer. You got to have good access to your stands. You got to play the wind, and you got to time your hunts when a lot of different factors are in your favor, such as the weather, those cold weather fronts. So that's more than one, but that's a handful of things I'm looking for this time of year.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll keep our fingers and our toes crossed for some late October cold fronts, and hopefully some giants get smacked.
Well, I hope both of you guys kill giants this year. Send me pictures.
Heck yeah. Yeah, I want to see Turning Point on the ground. That'd be a cool end to a story. And also, I really enjoyed the Babe video that you guys put out a few years back. That quote of the greatest thing you can leave to your family is a legacy of character and faith. That has kind of stuck with me. I'm like, So yeah. I'd like to see this Charlie Kirk one. I'm sure it'd be a sweet video.
Well, I got some ideas, but I got to kill the buck first, and that's the hard part.
Yeah, that's step one. So for people that want to keep up with you as we kind of go through the season, see if you do end up killing this buck or laying some other ones down, where's the best place for them to keep up with you?
Well, they can go to the Chasing Giants podcast, which can be seen on YouTube or listened to on just about all the major platforms, or my social media, Higgins Outdoors.